Are we all here? Are we all here? I'm enjoying that energy. Let's keep the energy high. We're here to have a very important discussion, and it's not just a casual discussion, it's a discussion about life and death. And that's why I'm hoping for your maximum attention. Okay? Anybody in this room that knows anybody with tuberculosis? All those hands have gone up. Anybody in this room that has had tuberculosis before? Anybody in the room that has had tuberculosis? Okay. There's a lady standing over there. What's your name? Naomi, right? Naomi. Naomi is from Kenya. Let's give her a round of applause. Naomi is a warrior. And we want to give as many people around the world the same opportunity that Naomi had. And that's why we are here today. Thank you very much to all of you for being a part of this important conversation. And I'm hoping that by the end of it, not only will we know each other better, but we shall have taken some action towards the fight against tuberculosis. I really demand your attention. Shall we have one meeting, please? Thank you. Right. My name is Alan Kasuja. I have a podcast called Africa Daily on the BBC World Service. And you can find me there. We talk about African issues. We talk about all the new ones. And I am now, I can say, officially engaged in the fight against tuberculosis. This is something that the last few days I have been shocked in my conversations with experts about how little we know about tuberculosis and how important it is that people who occupy the sorts of platform that I do can spread the word as much as possible. I'll be your moderator today. Thank you very much for being here. And then first of all, I'd like to introduce to you the inimitable. Let's give Luchika a round of applause. She's a force of nature. She's the executive director of Stop TB, Dr. Luchika DTU. Welcome. Come and make your opening remarks, Luchika.
Thank you so much. I don't have the charm of Alan, and I don't aim to do that. I am actually thrilled because you will hear today it's a very important moment, not because it's the day of the UN high-level meeting and we all worked for a year to make it happen, but also because today we have a panel of people representing different sectors here with us and speaking about TB. And we also will hear some amazing announcements, and we also celebrate, and I'm very honored, having Alan joining the TB movement and having John Green joining our TB movement as well. So you will hear more from, obviously, all of them, but what is extremely important, and not with just the two of them, is that we are reaching with our TB stories, challenges, and achievements and hopes beyond the usual group of people and beyond the usual suspects. And 2023 and September 2023 is a moment in which we have an opportunity to really craft our way towards ending TB, and I think we should use this. I want to just pay a round of applause to the people that made UNHLM successful and the people that worked very hard on the negotiations and securing that we have a declaration. And not because I am Romanian only, but I really want to thank the Romanian country and my colleague Gabriela here in the room, who was the EU negotiator for the political declaration. So thank you so much. I know that it was not easy to arrive here. I just want all of us, Alan, you already said, beyond all the things that we will discuss here, is the fact that with everything we do, we have a chance, an opportunity to save lives. And this is not just lip service in a building in UN. This is a reality because there are hundreds and thousands of people out there that actually depend on what we do. Their treatment, their diagnosis, the care for them. And we will hear from people today, and I'm happy Blessy and Binika are joining Naomi, because in the beginning, Alan, you asked the TB survivors here. We just have two joining now. Woo. And I think there will be more and more coming. So Alan, why don't we go ahead with the panel? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can I have my microphone back, please? Yeah. Thank you very much. And before we go on with the panel, I'm very excited about the panel. It's made up of some serious movers and shakers, and you should be excited about it as well. It's coming up in a moment. Before that, though, are there any media colleagues in the house today? Oh, I see you. Where are you from? From China? Anybody else? Any more media colleagues? Where are you from? The US? Japan? Anybody else? Online, we have a lot of people joining us online as well. So welcome, thank you. And by the end of this conversation, hopefully there'll be some interesting news lines coming out of this, or at least inspiration to write something about tuberculosis. Very, very important. Let's also acknowledge the presence of John Green. I really like that I've met you, John. John, you'll know more about John in a moment. You will if you don't know yet. Now, the world depends on USAID to fight TB. That's the reality of things. And I wish a lot more people did more. But the fact is, USAID is the #1 funder. And it's shocking that it's just USAID doing all the heavy lifting. But you know, it is the reality. And let's just give Atul Gawande, the USAID Assistant Administrator, a round of applause. He's coming to make what we expect to be an important announcement. Yes, please, Atul.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you all for being here this morning. I have some exciting new announcements. We've been making announcements all week. We've made a point that this is TB week, and we want, as the United States, to raise up TB week. And but I have even more that we have put together to announce. As you have seen, we are here as a U.S. government in full force to represent our domestic and international TB efforts. As the lead U.S. government agency and the largest bilateral donor for the international TB response, USAID will continue to work with leaders around the world to put into action the commitments being made today. USAID's priority is to ensure that we end the TB epidemic by strengthening the local TB networks to achieve the national TB strategic plans to reach every person with TB. That means you need to find the people who have TB, to cure those who need treatment by making sure we get them on treatment, and to prevent the spread of new infections and the progression to TB disease by taking the contacts of those folks and people with HIV and making sure that they have preventative treatment. That works. That has stopped TB all over the world. If you were at last night's event, you would have learned how it stopped TB in the United States in the 1950s. We know how to do this. We just have to do it. So we're also working to invest in the development, introduction, and scale-up of new tools for finding, treating, and preventing TB. And we are strengthening primary healthcare systems that improve access to those TB services, as well as the full range of essential health services that people need to live long and healthy lives. We hope leaders will commit to a robust and ambitious UNGA political declaration today that aligns with this global TB strategy. We have supported bold targets to put the world on track to end TB by 2030, and specifically, that has meant that we have been fighting to ensure the following priorities: that all people affected by TB have access to prevention, access to diagnosis, access to treatment and care services; that TB responses are equitable, inclusive, gender-sensitive, and human-centered; that it respects human rights. We've been working on the priority of doing the research, driving the research, development, rollout, and access to new tools and approaches, and seeing all of those accelerated by the world. We see that investments must be consistent with achieving the SDG target 3.3. And finally, that there is accountable leadership at all levels to meet these goals. That we all hold, us leaders, and all of your leaders accountable. At the last UN HLM 5 years ago, 2018, USAID launched a new programmatic approach called the Global Accelerator to end TB. and the approach aimed to increase commitment from governments and build the capacity of governments, as well as of civil society and the private sector, to accelerate countries' progress in reaching the global targets, specifically by strengthening our partnerships with ministries of health, improving the sustainability of technical support, and increasing locally generated solutions. And we've seen with this approach that in USAID's 24 TB priority countries for TB programming, that has resulted in a 55% reduction in TB deaths, a 25% reduction in TB incidence, and a 171% increase in TB notifications since 2000. However, as we all know, we did not come close to reaching the UN HLM targets from the last time. Over the past 2 years, we've lost incredible ground from the costs of the COVID-19 pandemic, reversing years of hard work. I'm enormously delighted to see the early data indicating that we are snapping back with full force, that we are recovering even faster than I had hoped. Today, we have several announcements about how we're building our efforts to support countries in reaching the new global targets to be set at today's meeting. And so the first announcement I'm going to make is that USAID's Global Accelerator to End TB is now expanding to have our TB Plus package of interventions that we believe will greatly contribute to the achievement of the new HLM targets and our USAID global strategy. This set of interventions is part of USAID's 2023, so our fiscal year starts in October for 2023 and goes through next year. Is it confusing? But it's part of what is a $394.5 million planned investment, which includes $23.5 million in new FY23 funding, thanks to Congress and thanks to President Biden. And it illustrates USAID's steadfast commitment to ending TB globally. It's designed to drive progress in the fight to end TB by 2030, and the package focuses on areas where progress has been slower or where USAID can maximize impact with our limited resources. So earlier this week, we have announced parts of this package. So there were prevention announcements we made last night at the Wednesday CDC event, so I'll just highlight what those were. Number one, to advance the prevention of TB globally, USAID and PEPFAR came together in collaboration with the Stop TB Partnership and its global drug facility to secure a 30% price reduction in the shortened TB prevention regimen, the 1 month regimen, which will procure $25 million in treatment for more than 2.5 million individuals at risk of developing TB. It cut the price from $14.25 for that treatment to $9.99, and that allows us to reach an extra 750,000 people with preventative treatment. As part of this effort, USAID then launched a $15 million donation program. You can find it on our website today, for the high-burden TB priority countries where we work, so that they may apply for these drugs as well. Access and quality will continue to be the focus of a focus for USAID as we introduce new and existing tools. And that's also why we initiated what I think is very cool. After a set of work with Virginia Commonwealth University's Medicines for All effort, we have backed over the last year the development of new technology for a more efficient way to produce the core raw substance, the API, for rifapentine, which is a key part of the preventative treatment. And now so we found a way to make it more efficient and cheaper and easier to produce, and then are transferring technology to a local African pharmaceutical manufacturer so that they can be part of the production and ownership of the solution. Then, we announced the day before at TB Innovations event, also on prevention, that with our partners in our Smart for TB consortium, led by Johns Hopkins, USAID launched Breach TB, a new foundational clinical trial on developing new TB preventative therapies, which will lay the foundation for the future testing of a single-dose, long-acting injectable medicine for prevention of TB, which would be a game changer. Announced Tuesday by a Global Fund press release in collaboration with Global Fund and Stop TB, USAID, together we announced a Cepheid testing price reduction of 20%, a major step in increasing equitable access to the testing component of what we need. So today we're going to add to that list with three more things. One, we're calling SWIFT TB, the Support Wide-Scale Interventions to Find TB launch. We will select one or two USAID priority countries to receive up to $15 million in fiscal year 2023 to roll out comprehensive approaches with new TB innovations at community and primary healthcare levels. We're looking for a dramatic opportunity to show that we can turn around TB in a country that is committed to making it happen in part of your country or in the whole of your country. We have to show that we can do this and can do it in a dramatic way, that we can put a place on the path to making it happen, and these funds are dedicated to making that happen in partnership with one or two of you who are willing to take that on. Second, as part of this, we anticipate selecting countries whose ministries commit to co-financing those innovations. That's going to be a crucial partnership where we have this commitment. We will come together and we will show the world it can be done. Second announcement is we will have support for conflict settings. USAID will increase support for TB programs in Ukraine, in Afghanistan, and in Burma with up to $8.5 million in additional fiscal year 2023 funding. We know that without intensified support for TB programs in conflict settings, TB will continue to spread. So we have to do this work, and that's why we are increasing our efforts in that space. And then finally, on localization. While national TB centers and programs are at the center of the fight in high TB burden countries, grassroots local organizations are the critical partners that are often represented by individuals affected the most by TB. Local TB networks have to be strengthened to reach every person with TB, to cure everyone in need of treatment and prevent the spread of new infections. So lastly, as demonstration of our ongoing commitments to localization efforts, USAID, let me point out that when I came into office, only 13% of USAID global health funds went to local organizations. USAID is going to commit to allocating 60% of TB country funding directly to local partners by 2027, the end of this high-level meeting period. As part of it, USAID will strive to have at least 50% of USAID's TB resources in each country programmed directly to local partners by the end of the same period. So it's not just on average. In every country, we aim to be over 50%. This agenda is ambitious. We're committed. There's going to be hard work and dedication, which will be required of us and will be required of you to achieve the commitments that will be made today at the high-level meeting. USAID will start to put our commitments into action now, and we believe these interventions will contribute to our shared fight to end TB by 2030. Thank you all. We look forward to working with you on this.
That was the first round of applause. Let's give him a second round of applause. I can see some people are not clapping. I'm not very happy about that. The only reason, if for nothing else, then because there'll be some there'll be African participation in the manufacture of these drugs. This is really important. A lot of important things coming out. And can I please stabilize my mic, please? Thank you. The next session is going to be a conversation that I'm going to invite a very powerful panel to be a part of, going to where we really cut through the noise and get straight to the issues so that we can hopefully clock mileage in the course of that conversation. Right. I'd like to introduce you to my panel, if I may start first of all by inviting the Honorable Minister from Brazil to come on stage. And we'd also like the Assistant Minister of Health from Romania, the full Minister of Health from Romania, my apologies. As you can imagine, it's not up to me to demote you, so. Pakistan, the Assistant Minister, thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause as well. Everybody is a minister. Please, please. I'd also like John Green to join them. John Green is a tour de force, I'd like to say. I don't know if anybody around the world has made more noise about tuberculosis than John Green. He's an award-winning author, and he has been a very, very powerful addition to the voice in the fight against tuberculosis. The Global TB Caucus is represented by the Honorable Nick Hubbard. He didn't show up. He hasn't shown up yet. That's kind of convenient because I was a bit worried at the number of seats on stage. We will make sure that he's taken care of when he gets here. And then I'd also like you to meet Deliana Garcia, who will be representing a civil society. And finally, last but not least, we have DG Max from Indonesia. And we are going to have a very robust conversation. I've been given notes, but I tend to ignore notes so that I can just talk. Please have a seat, if you may. Thank you very much to all of you. And again, first of all, John, I'd like to start with you. I'd like you to paint a picture for me. If for nothing else, then because I think that TB requires a bit more attention.
Yeah, I think TB has always been a neglected disease. Even in 1882, when Robert Koch was identifying the bacteria, he almost seemed apologetic. He was like, I know that we're much more worried about cholera and plague, but actually TB is responsible for about 20% of all human deaths, so maybe we should also pay attention to this one. It was the deadliest disease in the 15th century, in the 16th century, in the 17th century, in the 18th century, in the 19th century, in the 20th century, and it will be the deadliest infectious disease in the 21st century if we continue on this path. The difference is that the 21st century will be the first century in human history when the deadliest infectious disease is curable. TB has been curable for 75 years. And we have done, I think, not nearly a good enough job to get the cure to where the disease is. 23 years ago, Dr. Peter Mugeni made a famous speech about HIV in which he said, where are the drugs? The drugs are where the disease is not. And where is the disease? The disease is where the drugs are not. And that is our situation with tuberculosis today. We have a cure, but the cure is where the disease is not, and the disease is where the cure is not. And so that's the crisis we face.
Why do you think that is? Why doesn't it get as much attention as it should? Is it because it's a poor people disease?
Yeah, racism, colonialism, a long history of not treating all human lives as equally valuable. Ultimately, you can't really say in the 21st century that tuberculosis is even caused by the bacteria M. tuberculosis, because we know how to kill that bacteria. So maybe illness is caused by that, but death from tuberculosis is caused by human choice. It's caused by human-built systems. And so that's terrifying and horrifying and deeply upsetting. It means we're not doing a good job of assigning equal value to every human life. But it's also hopeful in the sense that if we are the cause of tuberculosis, we may also be the cure to tuberculosis.
All right, I see the Honorable Nick is here. Nick, nice to see you, Member of Parliament from the United Kingdom. Prepare to tell me why the UK, whether the UK is contributing enough to the fight against TB and why USAID is contributing to Europe's fight against tuberculosis. I'm sure you'll have an explanation and you'll share some insight with us. But I'd like to come to you, Madam Minister from Brazil. Before you took up your job, you are also a researcher in this field. So you have the unique insight of not just being on both sides. You know, well, first of all, what's the situation like in Brazil at the moment, to start with? And what is going on there? As a researcher and as a policy person at the moment, talk to me about what you see from both sides.
I think you told pretty much what everyone think in this room. It's a very strong speech, and I totally agree with you. In Brazil, the situation that we are arriving this high-level meeting is worse than the first one, especially for...
It's worse than it was in 2018?
Yes, it's worse than...
It's gotten worse in 5 years?
Yes.
Why?
Because the pandemic and because of the poverty. The poverty increased in all of the world.
Talk to me about the pandemic and how the pandemic affected it.
The pandemic affected many ways, but I would say in Brazil we have the old government. I'm a part of the new government, so I should just say that.
And this is not just politics. This is not politics.
I think you raised a very important point in the beginning, saying that I was in the both part. As a research, I didn't realize how important the political part was in my 25 years in research field. I always think that I was a researcher. I have to do my job. I have to come out with the results and the fundings, look for the fundings, doing the research, give the speech for the big conference in the academic world. But I realized that without politics, we couldn't change nothing. So this is why I accept this job and make all this completely different.
So what are you doing differently? As a researcher who's now a politician involved in the policy formulation, what are you doing differently?
Yeah, we put tuberculosis as a high priority in Brazil. We bring the case for the President Lula with I'm the Vice Minister, the Ministra Nízia Trindade, which is today launch a very important paper in The Lancet with Dr. Tedros about the importance of accelerate the vaccine to tuberculosis. We just launched today. And we bring this to the table, and President Lula signed a very important decree, make all the ministers work together to eliminate TB in Brazil.
Do the ministers understand what it is?
What?
Do they understand it? Do they understand the urgency?
Yes, yes. And they are called about the President Lula cabinet to work together. So it's like a mandatory to work in tuberculosis in Brazil right now to end this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Round of applause to her. I want to go to Romania next. And I wonder what the situation is like in Romania. It's gotten worse over the last 5 years in Brazil. What has the last 5 years been like in Romania?
In Romania, thank you very much for your question. First, in Romania, it's rapidly decreasing the incidence of tuberculosis. And it's a trend not in the last 5 years, it's the last 18 years. From 2005, we start to the trend declined, and now we started at 140 incidents. Now it's around 45. It's a good evolution, but the figures are still high, especially for a country which.
When you say 45, do you mean 45,000 or just 45?
No, 45 per 100,000.
Okay,
The
good.
incidence, yes.
Thank you.
We are working hardly now, and we are lucky because we don't have funds from USAID because we are no more eligible for these funds starting with 2007.
So where's the money coming from?
It's from the budget, from the government, but also we have grants from the European Union, and also we still have from the Global Fund. We still have some money, and we are lucky because it's not only the governmental activity. We have very good partnership with very good NGO, which is called Romanian Angel Appeal, and they have a lot of experience in dealing, especially with preventive actions. And we are working very hard. We have now mobile units to reach communities which are vulnerable and to try to actively detect TB cases and also to be able to give them preventive treatment. So.
Yeah,
Yes.
very, very interesting. I'm just wondering, how do Europeans view tuberculosis?
Europeans view tuberculosis like a threat, especially MDR-TB.
Do they really?
Yes, I think so. I don't know. We have here a colleague from UK. They have a low incidence of this disease, but they still have problems, especially with people coming from other countries with higher incidence, and it's a matter of priority, the MDR-TB cases, because people can travel very easy inside the European Union, and this is especially for such a person. It's important to detect it and to treat it, and to convince the person to be treated is because the treatment for this kind of patient is not one of the easiest one, especially for the patient. So,
What do you mean by that?
it's the adherence to the treatment of the patient is difficult because it's a long time treatment. It lasts, and adverse events following the treatment are very hard and sometimes are life-threatening. These adverse events. So it's a matter of discussion and also psychological assistance for this kind of patients.
All right, let's give him a round of applause for that very insightful submission. Pakistan, 45 out of 100,000 in Romania. What are the numbers in Pakistan?
At the outset, let me express my deepest gratitude to Stop TB Partnership and all our global partners. And first of all, let me tell you, Pakistan, as a country, we have come a long way. And especially in the wake of recent floods and COVID, and I think the way the policy of the government and the way the provincial, the local governments, and the national government have worked, we have made a lot of progress. And in, I would say in the TB, we have made progress in a way that about 600,000 of our total population, of course, Pakistan is among the 5 most populous countries of the world right now, we have made progress. The problem in Pakistan was...
When you say we've made progress, and you say it more than once,
Yeah.
what sort of numbers are we looking at?
We are saying about 600,000 persons have been registered as of now, and about 400,000 have been cured. So this is the number that we have, what we can call progress in that matter, and about the target that was given to us by the Stop TB and by the global partners. We have achieved 40% of the target, and still there's a lot to do. And again, I would say...
Why have you not achieved 70, 80, 100%? What's the problem?
Because, first of all, I would say the ground realities, the outreach. You know, Pakistan is a very diverse country. We have from north to south. We are sandwiched between the countries, say Iran, Afghanistan, and India. And of course, we have a lot of porous border with Afghanistan. So it is, as a strategy, this whole thing has to be considered as a region for the TB. If you take individually as a country to country, I think we have problems in that. But I would say, as far as polio is concerned, we have done that in polio. We can do it in TB. that these countries, which are, of course, disease doesn't know any borders. It doesn't know any frontiers. So this whole block should be considered as one block as far as health is concerned.
Why have you made progress? Why?
Of course, we have made progress because we have support from our global partners.
Okay, but beyond that, you can have support and still not make progress. When on the ground, what is it that is working that needs to be scaled?
Okay, we have a very good teamwork. We have very good, I would say, local government and our district level, union council level, local government level administrative setup, where we have assistant commissioners, deputy commissioners, the commissioners who are head of the task force, and they are people on the ground. They are going door to door.
So that is where the solution lies, door to door.
Exactly. You have to go door to door
Right.
for that.
That's very interesting. Thank you very much for that. And then Indonesia. DG Max, I saw you nodding. I wonder if there is anything that you can relate to from what you've heard about Pakistan. And also, what's the situation like in Indonesia?
Yeah, thank you. Situation TB case TB Indonesian in the world, Indonesian second rank after India for case TB, and every year estimate case TB near 1 million. 900,000 cases every year, and more 140 case death every year. So now we effort to find new cases every year, and this year, last year, we find a new case high in the before last year, and we find more 715 new case, and success rate for treatment more 85%.
So that's the success rate.
Yes, success rate.
So, from what you've just told me, Indonesia is truly struggling with TB.
Yeah, for eliminate TB, I think for Indonesia, the key for eliminating TB for 2030 are political commitment. We have a high political commitment for our president instruct a decree, and the second collaboration in the government, private sector, and the NGOs, and the third community engagement. Community engagement is very, very important, especially for decrease stigma TB. And fourth, innovation for diagnostic, innovation for treatment, and including developing in vaccine. Yeah, Indonesian have candidate 3 vaccine to product in our country.
Are you saying you're producing 3 vaccines at the moment?
Yeah. We cooperation in Bill Melinda Foundation Gate and CanSino vaccine from China and BioNTech and from Germany.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause. I just want to turn to Member of Parliament, the Honourable Nick Hubbard. Nick, I'm really interested, now that you've just been listening to what's going on here, where do you think, given the work that you've done around TB, where do you think the challenges and the gaps are at the moment, as far as funding especially is concerned?
Well, I'm sorry to have joined you late. I got trapped in another part of the building here in the UN, and I was going up an escalator, round, and then down again, and then up again and down again. And I felt that this was some kind of terrible metaphor. for the cycle that we find ourselves in the battle against TB. Many of us were here at the high-level meeting 4 years ago, and it was a high watermark when the targets to beat TB, what needed to be done to meet the SDG goal, which is we now find is just 7 years away to end this disease, were reset, and so we walked away with a spring in our step. All the air came out of the balloon after that. And of course, we know that there was the intervention of COVID. But the truth is that even if COVID hadn't intervened, we would have still been off target. And so I would just make this sort of simple point. It's great to see this resolution that will be discussed today. It's great to see the recommitment and the resetting of targets, which become ever more ambitious in order to meet the commitment to beat TB, along with the other major diseases in just 7 years' time. But what matters is whether these ambitions will be translated into political action or not. And so the crucial question will be how we are able to hold the countries that make these commitments today by agreeing this political declaration. How are we able to hold them to account? Let me give just the example of research and development. We all know how important it is that there is sufficient investment in the new tools to be able to beat this disease. We know how important the vaccine is. No epidemic in human history has been beaten without a vaccine. We know how important better diagnostics are. We know the opportunities here. We know what COVID has shown us about what can be done. There was an R&D target that was set last time. We were told, wasn't it? I'm trying to remember. 1-2 billion a year that was needed in order to improve the new tools. We never raised more than a third of that money. Now the target's been reset and it's been increased because time is running out, and we're currently raising a fifth of the money. So the challenge for every country is how they are going to, and whether they will, meet the ambitions that are actually set, or whether these targets, frankly, are simply numbers written on a bit of paper that nobody will adhere to. And that's the question. Will things really change as a consequence of the adoption of this political resolution? Do political leaders mean what they say when they say that this disease will be beaten in 7 years' time? Or are we going to find ourselves going up the escalator and down again and be back here in another
Is it just down to lack of...
That's the challenge.
Is it just down to lack of political commitment? What do you think is the problem in terms of... Why are these shortfalls happening in raising the funding?
Well, I think we all know about the problem of TB being the orphan disease, the disease that does not command the same level of political attention by comparison to some of the other major diseases. And then even if that weren't the case, you've had the intervention of COVID. And that has clearly shocked public finances and diverted an enormous amount of resource. But COVID has also provided an indicator to us of what can be done, of how quickly vaccines can be developed with sufficient will and resource, of how quickly new diagnostic tools can be brought forward, of the power of new technology, and so on. And actually, I think there is an enormous overlap between what we are discussing here with TB and the PPPR agenda, and what needs to be done to prepare for the next pandemic is what we can do now to beat these ones. And we should be aligning, and we will be back here in a year's time to discuss antimicrobial resistance, which has been mentioned already. TB is the single biggest component of AMR deaths now. It will be the single biggest component of AMR deaths under the worst projections in the future. You can't talk about AMR. They won't be able to talk about AMR next year without talking about TB. So we're going to be back sooner than 4 years. All of these are opportunities for TB to re-insinuate itself into the debate and to make it relevant to political leaders in countries that don't think TB is an issue.
Let's give him a round of applause. I think that's really important. And I'm going to come to Deliana in a moment, but John, how do we make politicians uncomfortable with this whole TB thing? You're the king of doing that. You're the king of making noise and making people uncomfortable and bringing these campaigns right into their faces, because there's clearly a need for that, isn't there?
Oh, I'm a baby when it comes to making people uncomfortable. I look at people like Blessy, who knows how to make somebody uncomfortable to make change in this world. I look at people like Luchika, so many people in this room who taught me how to make people uncomfortable to make change in this world. And I'm just a tiny newborn baby. But you get mad, right? Like, look at the success that HIV and TB activists have had over the years. It's because it's from being mad, it's being angry. I mean, we talk about these numbers, 1.6 million people are going to die of TB this year. Well, that removes from the reality that each of those people is a mother or a kid or a father or a sister or a brother who's going to leave behind heartbroken family members, who may infect those family members and leave more heartbroken family members. That is the real story of tuberculosis. It's a human story that happens again and again.
Okay, just introduce yourself really quickly, please.
My name is Blessy Kumar. I'm from India, TB community worker.
Yep. And you just kept saying yes as John spoke. Pick up.
Ooh.
Get mad, Blessy.
Okay. I am mad.
There we go.
I am really angry that my biggest fear is that I've just tweeted that civil society and communities choose to remain silent when people are dying. And I totally agree with Nick. A political declaration is a piece of paper. What happens is when we go back home, who holds who accountable? How do we ensure that this political declaration makes a difference to reduce my suffering, suffering of people with TB who are dying every day, and makes life better for them? I think that's the question. So, yes, we can celebrate, but let's also hang our heads in shame because people are dying. Where is the anger? I see just a few people getting angry, like Luchika and a few others, but I think we need to have the courage to challenge.
I just want you to, let's give a round of applause. Do you mind standing up, if you don't mind, just so I can speak to you better? Just bring it home for me. Tell me from a personal perspective how TB has affected you, because a lot of people don't understand what the impact of TB is on people's lives.
Actually, I was the lucky ones. My parents are medical people. My TB was nothing. 6 months of treatment and it was over. But what I want to talk about is people today with drug-resistant TB. It takes 3 years, 4 years, running from pillar to post because there's no access. And today, my heart is heavy because in my country, we have complete stock out of drug-resistant TB medications, and people are dying.
Okay, let's zero in on that a little bit, because when you speak like that, you're speaking in big language, and people might not understand. Do you know anybody who's been affected personally?
With the stock out?
Yes.
Yes. Every day there are at least 3 newspapers that are reporting. My WhatsApp doesn't stop. I'm getting messages throughout the night saying my brother is dying, my mother is dying. There are no drugs. And now doctors are taking to Twitter saying, how do we treat people? We have no medications to put a regimen together. And why is the world silent?
Tell me a story that has stuck with you.
A 19-year-old boy, Abdul, was referred to me about three weeks ago with MDR TB, bone TB, really bad sores, and I contacted the doctors that I knew, hospitals that I knew. One of the government hospitals took him in, and he went to the other side of Delhi. The doctor called me and said, Blessy, I'm struggling. I have no 3 drugs that I need to treat him. They're not available anywhere in Delhi. How do I put the regimen together? So if Abdul dies, his blood is on my hands. And it should be on everybody's hands.
Let's give a round of applause. Naomi, where is my friend Naomi? Naomi, where are you? Naomi, come here. Naomi, come. Naomi is one of the fighters. She's a champion. And the reason when we meet like this, we talk about data, statistics, big numbers, but we don't know that TB is about people. Let's give Naomi a round of applause. We walked together to this place today. Naomi, tell me about yourself. First of all, just tell me a little bit about you.
My name is Naomi, and I'm a health care worker. I come from Kenya. I'm a TB champion and a survivor.
Tell me about how TB has affected you personally.
Personally, I got TB, and this time round, I got TB of the spine. And to be precise, MDR TB.
What is that? I don't know what that means.
Is TB that is resistant to treatment. I had to go from drug sensitive to drug resistant TB.
And that's the same situation you're talking about? Okay. And in this particular case, tell me about the impact on you. How has it affected you?
A whole year, I couldn't walk. I couldn't do anything. I was bedridden for a whole year. And nobody was there to take care of me. And it took a whole year for me to be told that you have resistant TB. And
why did it take so long?
Because of misdiagnosis. People believed that being a healthcare worker, I was aching from my back because of the work that I'm doing. Little did they know that it was TB. It took a whole year for me to get the diagnosis.
And all this time, you're at home and nobody's taking care of you.
The worst part is even my fellow healthcare workers couldn't come to my aid. They refused even to come and inject me the injectables. I had to inject myself. Today I would inject this side, thanks to my big body. The next day I would inject on the other side. Just imagine the pain I was going through. And yet I'm a healthcare provider.
Wow. Wow, that's profound. Why were they not coming to give you treatment?
Fear of infection.
And this stigma, does it continue to live with you today?
Up to today, they call me Naomi. The Naomi, how can I put it? Naomi TB. Up to date, even my mom keeps calling me. Are you sure you got healed, completely healed from the TB? They still believe there are some few infection in me.
But part of that is actually the ignorance around TB. I was the first to admit that I know very little about TB, despite being a journalist of my standing. Is that part of the problem, the fact that people need a lot more education and that's not happening?
Yes, a lot of education. For me, I had self-stigma, community stigma, healthcare provider stigma, call all the stigmas that are around. Even from the first place, I couldn't tell anybody that I was suffering from TB. I was telling them, it is just a mere backache. Until that time that somebody came and told me, just go open about the disease and you will help others.
Are there people who meet you today and say thank you that you talked about TB?
Oh, they celebrate me. Now I'm posting all the pictures here and they are happy and they are telling me, come with the goodies from New York. And it was a blessing in disguise. And I want this light that was lit by the TB not to be covered, but to shine to the community, the TB community.
And how are you now?
I'm celebrating.
Yeah. Are you better? What does the doctor say?
Yeah. The most beautiful part of it is after I got the treatment. I went to the treatment 36 months. The most beautiful thing, I was able to get another baby. And I celebrate that.
Every reason to celebrate. Every reason to celebrate. Let's give Naomi a round of applause. From that conversation alone, if nothing else, then when the interventions come in, they clearly work. But Deliana, someone just said that civil society, what's going on with you and what are you not doing? There's someone who's calling you out and doesn't feel like you're pulling your weight.
Blessy, I'm not pulling my weight. I think Blessy is absolutely correct. that I think it's been really hard for civil society to take root and move forward. And Dr. Gwandi, I was a fangirl way before you got this post, but it has been because your organization, your agency, and the work of Sherry, that we have been able to have the challenge facility for civil society. Because what civil society has not had until now is really the opportunity that was provided by the partnership to organize and to mobilize, because you can have angry people who know the reality, but they can't get to their legislator. And one of the things that's really wonderful is that through these partnerships and this capacity, we've been able to reach the Global TB Caucus and all of those caucus in the countries where they're willing to take up our story. And so we show up, we understand what's going on the ground, we have the ability to come together, to come here. And then we're able to come back to our countries and say, we're looking, we're gonna hold you accountable. In 2018, we came with a lot of hope, right? A lot of enthusiasm.
But if they're not raising all the money, then you're not holding them accountable enough.
But I think that that's one of the issues that becomes the case, is if you have a legislator who can speak to the budget issues, and they are the people that can, then you start to move that forward. But it has taken us a while to gain that ground and find champions who are willing to go back to the national budget and say, no, this has to change, this has to increase. Unfortunately, it's a process, and we're up there against things like malaria, HIV, Chagas, chikungunya, dengue. I mean, there's so many infectious diseases that it really then becomes a case where we do have to look at the pandemic preparedness. We do have to look at universal health care coverage. All of those things need to come together, but it's really civil society standing there and making sure.
And Nick, I just want to pick up, because you seem to be agreeing with a lot of what she's saying. Civil society, how can it do its job better, number one, in collaboration with legislators like yourself? But also, what is it like to be a British legislator fighting TB? Is it a lonely fight? Are you alone in this?
Well over 15 years ago, when I was then a newly elected member of parliament, I went on a visit to Kenya to have a look at what was going on with TB and HIV. And being a parliamentarian, I had not read my briefing. And I went to the first meeting in a hospital in Nairobi, and they told us how dreadful things were. And it was very startling. And I just, well, why aren't you vaccinating people? And I'm afraid, I think it's true that, you know, a lot of legislators in Western parliaments have no idea that TB is an issue. They think it's been beaten. I went back to my parliament in the UK, and we formed our all-party group on global tuberculosis. And the badges then said, "Stop TB." And I had a great run on these badges. I had members of parliament coming up to me and saying, "Oh, I'd really like to join your campaign." And I handed out hundreds of these badges, and it was only after a year that I realized people thought it meant "Stop Tony Blair." And my campaign wasn't having quite the impact that I had expected. But the truth is, to be more serious, we formed that committee. That committee encouraged the UK government to adopt a public health strategy to deal with the incidences of TB in the UK, which have been referred to earlier, that are low, but nevertheless needed to have a better strategy to tackle them, about 5,000 cases a year. Then we started to tie up with other global legislators. Yeah. Then we set up the Global TB Caucus. When we started, there were only 4 national TB caucuses in the world. Now I think there are something like 60. That's what we've got going, and we've got 2,500 parliamentarians across every region of the world. We've been meeting here in New York, our board of with members of parliament from our 8 regions, meeting here to discuss what we are going to do to help ensure that this declaration is translated into action. And as Del said, what the members of parliament, we have to play our role in holding our governments to account. And yes, your voice can be a lonely one in your parliament, but we are determined to unite and to exercise that voice.
Sorry, you want to say something, Del? Yeah, go on.
You, though, Nick, because now Blessy has called me out, now we get to roll downhill with you, is that we've had the deadly divide that came out right after the 2018. And there's been another communities and civil society report for those priorities. And I think we were here together celebrating, believing that would go back. And I think what's really been clear to us now is, you say it frequently, parliamentary's attention gets divided in a million different ways. So now there just needs to be a flame under your foot always and constantly, from folks from civil society, using those reports, using those funds from the Challenge facility to get groups together to keep coming back and coming to our regions and coming to our parliamentarians. You can run, but you can't hide.
Yeah.
That's true. And I think that parliamentarians need to work. I think they need to work together. I think parliamentarians need to work with civil society. And draw the strength and the arguments and the passion from civil society. And you referred to that. That's what's going to be most effective, is if you can forge those alliances. But I am grateful for those members of parliament, particularly in countries where TB isn't necessarily an issue domestically. We do need those voices in those parliaments who are willing to stand up and speak out about this, and they need to be encouraged and supported because we need those champions in every parliament around the world.
Right. Thank you very much. I'm going to come to the online questions in a bit. Thank you very much to everybody who's sending them in. Please keep sending them in, Madam Minister.
Just to tell that we have a very important parliamentary here. Antônio Brito is the responsible for the Brazilian task force in the parliament against tuberculosis.
Where is he? Thank you. Please come. Yeah.
And from the Uruguay, you have.
We also have. Good.
Yeah, Peru.
Peru.
And Peru.
Oh,
and Peru,
okay.
Uruguay.
Excellent.
Uruguay and Peru.
Okay, so we have. Yeah, please come. Let's have a conversation.
Paraguay.
Yes. Yeah, please come and join me. We're talking parliament and influencing these things really quickly. Sorry, I tend to be a bit. Yeah. Come here. Stand with me here. Yeah.
So you have Brazil, Uruguay, Paraguay.
Yeah. And sir, thank you.
And Peru.
Right. Does anybody? Let me just ask you one question here. Yeah. Oh, you're going to translate. Okay. Does anybody else need a translator? Right. Okay. First of all, just give me a sense of what the situation is like in your side of the world. We've had what it's like to mobilize in Parliament in the United Kingdom. What's the situation where you come from?
Yes. First of all, I agree with Nick. In Brazil, for example, we create in September a standard committee that's discussing about the budgetary for the next year, 2024. So if you need to change the situation, in Brazil, for example, we have now 80,000 new cases a year, 5,000 deaths a year. So we need the parliamentarians like me discussing about how is the money, how is the budget is enough to change the situation.
Is it easy to talk about that?
Definitely it is. I'm a leader there in my parliament of my party. So I asked when I return back with the front of my caucus, what was the exactly budget that I need, that I think that I have to do before, after you come back.
You politicians are usually quite, you develop blind spots where, it doesn't suit you, I wonder if parliamentarians in Brazil understand the need to fight this, because you speak to a lot of people from other places and they don't really get it.
Yeah, in Brazil especially, you work together with the Minister of Health. You work together with civil society. So I think that in Brazil is more easy because you have to discuss our plans together with the minister, Nise, with Etel, with Marcia, and everybody. So I think it's better in Brazil. We will do our best. You'll see that.
All right, brilliant. We'll hold you to account. Anybody else want to say something?
En primer lugar, agradecer.
Wants to thank everyone.
Estoy muy emocionado de estar acá.
He's very excited to be here.
Nuestra situación en Uruguay es mejor que la
is
de
better
muchos de los que están acá.
than many of the countries who are here.
Quiero destacar fundamentalmente
But I would like to tell you really fundamentally
la colaboración que hemos tenido por parte del gobierno brasileño
the collaboration we've had with the
y
government
hemos
of Brazil.
establecido una alianza estratégica
established
para tratar de erradicar.
strategic alliance
Brasil como líder
with Brazil
en
as
este
a
tema
leader
y Uruguay
to
porque
eradicate.
está con las condiciones como para en el mediano plazo tratar de erradicar
Because
la tuberculosis
Uruguay
de
is in the
América.
position where
Podemos
they
ser uno
could
de los primeros
eradicate
países
TB
en
in a very
erradicar
short
en
term
América la tuberculosis.
because they could really start working
Pero
down
quiero
on
dejar un
this in the
mensaje.
Americas. But he'd like to leave a message.
Si no tenemos una decisión política firme,
If we don't have a firm political
global,
decision, global,
nada de esto es posible.
nothing is possible.
Pasan
None of this
los
is possible.
años y seguimos con promesas
Years pass and we continue with promises.
y
And the
que
truth
precisamos decisión política.
is that we need the political
Este
decision.
evento para nosotros es muy, muy importante.
And that for us is really, really important.
Tiene que haber una declaración. Tiene que haber una declaración política.
There needs to be a political decision.
No es la que nos hubiera gustado.
It's not the one we would have liked.
Compromiso
But we take on the
que en la
commitment
próxima vez podamos
next time
revisar y ver los avances que hemos tenido.
that we're going to be able to review and demonstrate.
Ahora la
the
excusa fue
increases
la pandemia
that we've
de
had.
COVID.
Certainly right now the pandemic was a problem.
Se entiende.
COVID. We understand that. But the next time we won't understand that.
Nuestra lucha.
That will be
Muchas
our
gracias.
fight. Thank you.
Pastor Vera, diputado de Paraguay.
This is
y
Pastor Vera from
copresidente
Paraguay.
del
He's
Frente de las
co-president
Américas.
of the
Un gran
Caucus
gusto
in Americas.
compartir esta reunión, este encuentro
He's glad
muy
to be here at this
importante y emotivo.
meeting. Important
Nosotros en Paraguay
issue.
hemos avanzado
Paraguay
bastante.
has advanced a lot.
Desde el trabajo parlamentario
With the
creo que
parliamentary
logramos
work,
instalar en la agenda pública la
we've
problemática,
installed in a public
visibilizar el problema de la tuberculosis.
agenda to make TB visible.
Y en ese sentido hemos trabajado con la sociedad civil,
And in that way,
el
we've
equipo
worked
del
with
Ministerio de
the
Salud
civil
y
society
logramos
and the Ministry
aprobar
of
una
Health.
ley
And we've
especial
gotten a
con
law
un enfoque de
with a
derechos humanos
focus
que es muy
on
importante.
human rights, which is very
Ahora
important.
esa ley
Now,
está en proceso
that
de
law
reglamentación.
is getting, getting
Entonces
the
eso es la
regulations
tarea
in place.
pendiente.
And so
Además
that's what
hemos
the head of us is our
incidido de
work.
algún modo en el presupuesto
And
para
then we need to
lograr
really push to have
algo
a
más de
budget,
presupuesto de recursos para
to have
esta
sufficient
causa.
resources for this
De
cause.
modo que estamos comprometidos.
So we're very
Quiero
committed.
renovar mi
He
compromiso
wants to renew
de
his
seguir
commitment
con esta lucha
to fight with
con
this, to continue
entusiasmo
this fight
y
with
convicción,
enthusiasm, with conviction.
porque como decía acá mi colega Galo,
Because
esta
as
es
Galo
una
was saying,
cuestión política.
This is a
Y
political
vamos a
question,
resolver desde el
and we're
ámbito,
gonna
vamos a
resolve it.
contribuir desde el ámbito político
We're gonna
con
contribute from the
determinación
political
y creo que
environment.
juntos vamos a lograr el objetivo.
And
Muchas
in the
gracias.
end, we're going to meet our objective.
Dos problemas,
Two problems:
desigualdad y discriminación.
inequality and discrimination.
Un enfoque,
A focus:
interseccionalidad.
intersectionality.
Soy la primera congresista lesbiana en el Perú.
She's the first lesbian congressperson in Peru.
Nuestra comunidad
And our community
comparte
shares
la tragedia del
tragedy
VIH,
of HIV
la falta del tratamiento
and the lack of treatment.
y
And
el virus del VIH genera vulnerabilidad
And the
para que
virus
la comorbilidad
generates
con la tuberculosis sea muy alta.
vulnerability, so that the comorbidity with TB is really
Entonces, si el enfoque no es integral,
high. So if the focus isn't integrated,
la pobreza, la
poverty,
desigualdad y la
inequality
discriminación
and discrimination
seguirán matando peruanos.
would continue to kill Peruanos.
Pero,
But
teniendo 33 millones de habitantes,
having 33 million
tenemos
inhabitants,
3 millones de migrantes
we have 3 million migrants
en situación irregular,
in an undocumented situation,
sin derecho a ningún tratamiento,
without any right to any kind of treatment,
viviendo en condiciones terribles
living in
de
terrible
hacinamiento.
conditions of housing.
Por eso hemos presentado un proyecto de ley
That's why we've presented a law
para
project
que los migrantes
so that migrants
tengan tratamiento
receive
gratuito
treatment free
de tuberculosis
For TB
y tratamiento
and
de VIH.
treatment for HIV.
Por el propio seguridad de nuestra población que acoge.
For the security of our own population.
Pero las posiciones conservadoras
But the conservative positions
que están cerca de la muerte
that are close to death
dicen, ¿por qué le vamos a dar tratamiento
Why are
a
we
los
gonna
que
give
vienen
treatment
irregularmente?
for those
Y
who are
creo
coming
que ese
without
debe ser un
documentation.
compromiso global.
And that ought to be a global commitment.
Luchar contra la desigualdad, la
Fight
discriminación
against
y la
inequality,
pobreza. Y ahí
discrimination,
recién
and poverty.
podremos
And
decir,
then
nos acercamos al final de la
we would be
tuberculosis.
able to say we're getting close to the end of TB.
Gracias, obrigado. Thank you. Thank you very much to each one of you. And Del should moonlight as a translator. She's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much for bringing home some really important points for those of us whose Spanish is as good as Latin. I now want to focus on the messages coming in from online. There's quite a big number of people watching, following us online. And the first question, what steps are being done or taken to reduce prices for drugs and diagnostics to improve healthcare access in low and medium income countries? Does anybody fancy that question? Is anything being done? John, do you want to take that?
Not enough. I think that's the two-word answer.
Yeah.
We have a long way to go. We have a lot of people making a lot of money off the world's poorest communities, and as long as that's the case,
Give me an example without getting us into
I'll
trouble.
give you an example. It would be my distinct pleasure.
With that, let's just make sure we cover us legally so
Yeah.
that we don't
Yeah, so
I still need to go back to London at some point.
in 2019, Doctors Without Borders commissioned a study about what are these incredibly powerful, incredibly accurate gene expert tests for TB and XDR TB really cost, which is extensively drug-resistant TB. And they found that they probably cost between $3 and $4.50. Now, recently, the company that owns those tests and controls them has reduced the price by 20%, as Dr. Gawande mentioned, which is wonderful and very exciting news. We know there's further room. And we especially know there's further room on the XDR cartridge because right now they're charging $15 for each of those cartridges, and that is the test that we most need to understand the deadliest strains of this disease. And as long as it's being charged at a 300% markup, it's going to be very difficult for people, the people who need it most, to be able to afford those tests. It's very difficult for the people who are procuring those tests to procure enough of them, and that means the spread of XDR-TB, which is bad news for everybody. And so what that amounts to is the taking resources from the world's poorest communities and giving them not just to the world's richest communities, but to the richest people within the world's richest communities. And as long as that injustice persists, and that is the way that we choose to distribute resources, we're going to have a really hard time ending TB.
Luchika?
Yeah, I just want, so first of all, yes, a round of applause to what John just said. And it's actually fantastic that, John, you answered to that question. You know what I mean? Like a representative of the non-TB community and how you see it, you know? I just wanted to say that to drop this, to increase the access, one is the pricing. And, you know, we are pushing all for that. And it's, you said how, what was done. I think what was unique in the latest months, it's a collective effort coming from different groups, you know, different institutions, activists, as we said, USAID, Global Fund, some of the parts from us in Stop TB, but also the outside people, that citizens, you know, that matters, as well as our friends from MSA, PAIH, and TAG. Price is a part, but also what you all spoke and you, Del, mentioned, and I think the others, is the access to it. And the way how you try and bring them closer to the people that need, in such a way that any barrier that stays between them and the diagnostics, them and the treatment, is removed. And that can be distance, that can be poverty, that can be stigma, that can be shame. And we have a long way to go. And I think that here, being outraged and saying the things as they are is a huge part of what we should do next.
Let's give Luchika a round of applause. Thank you for that. And the next question from someone online, and I'll come to your question in a second, Sherry. Can anyone explain why there is a stock out of drugs in India? The country is held as an example in the fight against TB. Does anybody have an explanation for that? Anybody? Anybody? Yes.
So I don't have an explanation, but I think because it's silence, I think we need to say something, right? Because you see, there is a paradox here. The paradox is, on one hand, in the country, you have political commitment, and is the country that since 2017, loud and clear, speaks about ending TB by 2025, and is a country in which the budget increased several times, and there are some incredible initiatives in place. You know, there are some small amounts of money every year that are being given to the people with TB every month. It's not enough, but it's the only country that does that. Even the countries with 500 people don't give anything. There are initiatives in unpacking the TB and going at the community level and so on. There are then some heartbreaking and derailing situation that with all the political will and the commitment, if you don't put in place the treatments, all of this is like completely nonsense. So what happens is that unfortunately several tenders that India organized for procurement of drugs failed. I'm not in the position to explain why. So it led to these stockouts. And I think what the government should do immediately, unfortunately, I think there is a big parliamentarian session, by the way, Nick, in India right now, so very few high-level representatives from India, is to have an open, I would say, Facebook Live discussion with the survivors and the civil society. A one-on-one, put the things on the table. How do we sort the situation that we don't have people without MDR-TB treatment? Because what's the problem with this, and they know it, nobody can say, is that you stock out on MDR, you create XDR. And XDR is almost untreatable. And you create a bug that we can be infected, to which almost all the drugs we know are not working. So I think, sorry, it's scary for everybody. So
can I add one
yeah,
thing?
and Atul, I think, wants to add. So Atul and
I would like to add one elephant in the room that call intellectual property. The most part of the research in all of the world, in the basic research, is funded by state fund. It's our tax, our money. Why when this come to the industry, they charge us so high? So India can produce this medicine, but because of the intellectual property, they have this barrier, and they can give the medication for the people that most need. So the elephant in the room is, and we need the US lead this, because the most part of the intellectual property is here. So, and this is found for the US government. It's found, if you think and if you ask for the American people, I'm sure that the tax that they pay, they want to give for the other one. But few industry are maintaining this. And this is the barrier that we have right now in this 21st century.
Interesting, very interesting.
I'll just say that in India we are tracking this issue that Blessie's describing, and while I don't have the details of the specific, what we see is a common problem that indicates the kind of level of detail you end up having to get into. Governments will have federal funding. They will send it to the subnational level, state level, the county level, and at that level, they have to be able to do a tender. They have to be able to offer it out. So these medicines are offered out. And then what we've seen in India and seen many places is that then those tenders are challenged as unfair when a loser doesn't win the bid. And so they can't get a successful round. And in many of these instances, we've seen in our own agency as well, that getting a bid out, getting them out through without challenge, and then the challenge means you can't actually fill the stocks. And it happens over and over and over again at that state level, trying to get the budgets out. It also same reason that you have tie-ups around paying staff salaries, paying all those things. So we put a lot of effort around building financial management. This isn't a problem just in TB. We see it across the board, vaccines everywhere, trying to manage the processes to learn to put out these tenders and move them fast because lives are at stake.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. I'm just about to wind up this session. We're going to wrap up soon because there's a very important meeting coming up. What do you want to say?
the reason why it's happening is all irrelevant. I think what is relevant is that people are dying. So I have a request for all of you powerful people in this room. I think Luchika hit the nail. She said a face-to-face, interface, Facebook Live, whatever meeting. So Nick with the Parliamentarians Caucus, USAID, the biggest investor in TB, and with great relationship with India, Stop TB Partnership, whose chair of the board is my health minister, the community delegation and the NGO delegation of the Stop TB Partnership. Can I plead with you to make sure that interface in India happens, that we get an opportunity to actually talk with the program. It's very difficult for us in the country to reach high levels, but you have the opportunity, you have the wherewithal to make that happen. So this is my plea. If you can do that, that will be fantastic, and we will be very thankful.
Yay, blessing.
Let's give a round of applause. And that can be said about not just India, but pretty much every country. That you need to reach out, and we need to hold the people that are in charge of these countries to account. I'm going to wind up now because there is an important meeting coming up. Luchika, do you have final thoughts?
Yeah, I have. I always have.
She has final thoughts. She has continuing thoughts.
I always have thoughts. No, I just wanted to say I think this was very refreshing. And I think the genuinity and how to say your questions being, like trying to find out more were very helpful to make this panel very insightful. And I know this from so many people watching and sending me, oh my goodness, how this was pulled. We hope the UNHLM raised to the level of this panel. So this is really amazing for happening. I just wanted to say that so I am as unleashed as most of you because it's not acceptable that are people out there dying because of a disease that is curable. So that's something that we should all take it very serious and be outraged. But there is a sense of hope, and I want us to live with a bit of sense of hope that it can be done and it is feasible. And we had recently, this week only, announcements in dropping the price of drug-resistant TB, of preventive treatment, of the diagnostics. We heard investments from USAID into the communities in specific packages of intervention in some selected countries in maintaining the investments at the communities level. We announced a coalition of leaders in which 7 presidents are agreeing to be together in fighting against TB. And we will keep them together. And we have Indonesia, we have Brazil, Kazakhstan, and then we have South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, that are really an amazing group to work with. And I think there are 2-3 more announcements coming during the UNHLM meeting. So we have with what to work. But as everyone here said, what it matters is what happens starting, maybe not Saturday, Sunday, because everybody will be flat, but Monday. And how do we take this forward, not only in keeping people accountable, but even in monitoring what is happening and making sure that those that should drive this should be the people like Naomi, like Binika, like Blessy, like Del. They should be the ones monitoring, and they should be the ones keeping accountable everybody else. And I'm very happy, this is the last thing, and you should take my microphone because I will never stop. I wanted to say that it was very good to have the parliamentarians here. And I'm looking so much at you guys together with civil society that every country to make some noise. Because the government, and sorry, we have here the ministers, will at least listen to you. Maybe they will not be able to do too much, but they will have to listen to you. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you, Luchika. Before you sit down, there's one question. Liz, you need to open your phone, but basically the question is, Africa. We haven't heard too much from Africa here today. Very, very briefly, in a few seconds. What's the situation in Africa and what needs to be done?
Okay. So, yeah, we were trying to get Nigeria. They were running a bit around. There are 2 things about Africa. One is we have some flowers, and we have some countries that are really pushing very hard the agenda. And I'm mentioning here South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and so on. But overall, on that continent, we are lagging behind. And I think one of our biggest challenges is the fact that there is a lot of awareness around HIV there. There is very little awareness on TB. We didn't have the resources and the power to the scale to ensure that, a lot of money went into the HIV education. I would say billions, right? It went into creating networks over the years. Like I'm giving the example that Botswana brought to an IAS conference 85 people in one go. We were from the TB community 6 people. One was me, the other Blessy, Alberto, Colorado, and so on. 6. Botswana alone came to 85. There are huge investments from the donors that support HIV in Africa, and it should be like that. But that came in the detriment of raising any awareness on TB. And the conversations on HIV were crafted many, many years ago, elevated at the level of the presidents, national AIDS commissions directly under presidents. So the president, wanted or not, was involved. You know where TB stays in Africa? Under the deputy of the deputy of the deputy of the Minister of Health. I'm not joking. The NTP managers are happy to meet the minister. The president is like a big celebration. So we need to turn that. And that's why we are so happy to have South Africa, Kenya, Tanzania, and hopefully Nigeria in this coalition of leaders, because the Tanzania president is a woman and she's very strong, Kenya as well, and we know Ramaphosa. So we need to turn that around. So what we need in Africa, we need a John Green. We need an influencer. I'm looking here at my friends from Nigeria. We need an influencer. We need that brings the population in addition to the leadership that we try to do. Thank you.
What an education this has been for me. I don't know about you guys, but I am going to tell TB stories until I can't tell them anymore. Because this is about life, this is about Naomi, this is about Blessing. This is about the people who did not have the opportunities that Blessing and Naomi have had to survive and be around to share their experiences. I've had a very distinguished panel. Let's give them a round of applause. Each and every one of them has been absolutely brilliant. John and I are going to discuss Africa because we're going to take it on. Are we not, John? Yeah, we're going to take it on. And I just want to say thank you very much. Thank you. Please stay behind for a quick photograph, a group photograph, and for everybody that's been taking part in this. Otherwise, Africa Daily is the name of my podcast.
Yes.
My name is Alan Kasuja, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much.
We will have another round here.
Chelsea, I'm counting on you.